and after quite a few meetings, there was a recommendation put out by the committee to bring to the town council and for the first reading tonight. And I have a lot of comments here from the fire chief that makes what was written more like an ordinance should be, and answer some of the questions that people might have about it. Do you want to say anything, Dawn, before we go over the suggestions that were made?
Only to, I guess, reiterate a couple of the points that were made. We realized going in that when 3/4 of the people want you to do something, even though 3/4 of the people want you to do something, there's not going to be agreement on what you do. In the particular wording we have, we tried to have it educational where people would understand property rights and their responsibilities in using fireworks. And we try to protect people's property because one of the dangers of fireworks is fire. But one of the chief concerns is how close can you be to a neighbor's property and still set off fireworks? And we looked at different setbacks and we used a 50-foot setback. And some people figured it should be 200 feet. Well, 200-foot setback basically says nobody can shoot off fireworks because very few people have more property that they have 400 feet of frontage anywhere. So it was very difficult to come to a consensus on exactly what we put in writing. There were some people who said 4th of July only. Let's use that as a goal. The only time you can do fireworks is that one day. Well, maybe New Year's Eve will do it as well. Other people said, no, we should really have it very open. So we tried to come up with something that was reasonable, that addressed a lot of the issues. One of the major issues was youngsters who lived on lake property where there were rental buildings. And many of the renters come in for a week, and they stop along the way and buy truckloads of fireworks, and they're shooting them off every hour that they can for the full week. And then you have local parents whose kids are of an age where they go to bed at 8 o'clock, and the fireworks are going on continuously. We have the dog and animal issue, where dogs are very sensitive to fireworks, and a lot of people were wanting to protect that. So we try to come up with something that was not too restrictive, but was also not saying we're going to leave everything wide open. But we know that any one of you could look at that and say, well, I would have done this instead. And that's the nature of an ordinance. Everybody has their own sense of what's fair and what's not fair. So this is the best first guess that we could all come up with. And there was not, as he said, some of the people on our committee didn't want to have any restrictions. Some wanted a complete ban. So within our committee, it was a difficult time to reach a consensus. But again, as we look at this and pass it, and if it goes in intact in any way, it's not the end of the world. It could change next year because it may not be what we want. So it's our best try to get something and to educate people about how to be good neighbors and how to enjoy the holidays, but at the same time be respectful of what we're trying to do. We don't want to put a lot of pressure on the police department nor the fire department because they're the ones who will always be looked at to govern this. Even now we have people who are breaking the state law. And it's very hard to find out who is shooting the fireworks. And if the police are called, by the time they get there aren't any fireworks being set off. So we realize this is one of those ordinances which will probably be very hard to enforce, but if we can educate people saying what we think they should be doing, maybe it'll, again, be of some help. So that's a little of the background of the discussions that went on, and we're just hoping that people look at it and say, well, give it a try, and if we need to adjust it later, we can, and at least we're doing what the citizenry of the town have asked us to do.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Sir?
Josiah Small. I live 62 Fairfield Street, just down that way. Is there a map that shows what a 1 mile radius from Memorial Hall, which looks like that's where no fireworks are allowed? Is that correct?
We have a map at the station that would show the one end of it.
You could take 5, Then I
a rough idea.
looked at Google Maps and I'm 1.1 mile from walking Crooked, but I figured maybe it's, I don't know how to say
Yeah,
it's addressed.
I had a ruler and I could swing it around Memorial Hall and get a rough idea, of where that, a mile from Memorial Hall extends, but it is,
Yeah, like walking, it's a little over, but I suspect
it's
if
easy to
it's
slide,
straight
it's easy to
radius.
find it on a map, it's probably harder out in the country to
Yeah.
determine.
We do have a map at the police station that actually has a circle on it that shows that mile radius from the mile.
Okay.
And the rationale for that is basically is in keeping with the firearms,
Right.
that you can't discharge a firearm within 1 mile of.
Which makes perfect sense to me. I just was curious if I fell into that, or more specifically, the neighbors that kept me up and kept my kids awake fell into that.
That is
So you can come look at it.
UPF.
You can come look at that. if you'd like
Oh,
to.
great.
Another reason for having an ordinance here is if the police department gets called because somebody, neighbor or something, shooting off a lot of fireworks, it might be perfectly legal what they're doing, but the police can't do much about it unless they're breaking some law. I mean, you can go there and talk to them, unless they're breaking the state law or local law, there's nothing they can do about it. No matter how bad they're harassing their neighbors, or I guess it gets to harassment, they can do something, but just because it's a fireworks going off,
Yeah.
it's pretty hard for them to enforce something if we don't have an ordinance that says what people can and can't do.
But you still get it for the time zone, right? 10.
Did you have a copy of this? If not, I can read there are some allowed dates here that we would allow fireworks and times, and they are basically around the 4th of July. There was a week each side of the 4th of July that fireworks would be allowed, and then on New Year's. And it's from July 4th, from 9 o'clock in the morning until 12:30 on 12:30 a.m. on July 5th. And then December 31st, from 9 a.m. to 12:30 a.m. on January 1st. That's over New Year's. And during the day, on New Year's Day, up until 5 o'clock. And then from June 28th until July 11th, they would be allowed from 9 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock at night. That's 1 week each side of 4th of July.
So other than that, nobody can fire fireworks other than that. That's what you're saying.
Basically, that's right. Except if you're gonna have a special function, you can get a permit to have, if you're having some celebration or something like that, there will be a permit process. Did she give you a copy of it? The last page that you'll see there's a permit. And
I have it right
so
here.
you can get a permit if you want to have a party or put on some fireworks display.
Probably after this is done with us, we'll probably have
Uh,
Yes, ma'am.
Just a quick note on the fireworks permit. If we wanted to, like, say we had a child graduating from high school, yay, we're having a big party, and we wanted to do fireworks on that day, we'd have to get a permit? Just
Yes.
making sure, okay.
Yes, yes.
All right.
And there would be
So, did we say that?
restricted hours on the permit. The resident property owner may obtain a special permit at the town office to ignite fireworks on weekends, Friday through Sunday, as allowed by state law. Permits are issued for special non-recurring one-day events and are limited to no more than a 4-hour time block.
Is there a charge for the permit?
No.
No.
No?
Need the money, the dollar needs the money.
I have $750.
Yeah.
We just named them $750.
Probably there should be, if you can afford fireworks, you can afford the permit, right?
There you go.
All right.
Josiah?
Yes, I had a few issues. What if you rent? Because I noticed in here, if you don't own the property, you don't get to let off fireworks, is how I read it. If you need like written permission from the property owner from the spot you rent on, or like, I know we have a lot of people that rent just over the summer or whatever, like was mentioned. Does the property owner have to have written permission for the people who are renting the property? to
In
do
the
that?
second line, it says that if you don't own the property, you have to have written permission from the owner of the property.
Okay, so.
So if you rent a house somewhere and the owner doesn't have a problem with you having fireworks, he can give you permission to have fireworks there.
Okay,
If he's worried you're gonna burn the place down or something, he doesn't have to give you
yeah,
permission to do
which,
it.
it's his property, that's his decision or
And
her
there is a,
decision.
you know, also down in the 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth paragraph, you'll see there's one, like right now, you couldn't use fireworks at all because of the fire danger.
My last issue, I think, would be the 50-foot thing. Does that also apply to the road? Do you have to be 50 feet off the road, which is common sense to me, but I've seen it happen right under the wires.
I don't believe so. I think as long as you're not in the roadway. I was trying to see if it was spelled out here.
That's really strange.
Yeah, if you-
Fireworks are not permitted on any property owned and controlled by the town of Oakland. So long as you're off the roadway,
Okay, so you don't have to be the 50 feet off the road,
No.
just off of
As long as
somebody
you're off the
else's
road. But we've had issues with people throwing fireworks out into the road or setting them off in the road.
property. Is it, are we still in the being able to change it, or is
Yeah,
this?
and that's something we may have to look at, because you might have a road that's not 50 feet across, and you would be perhaps within 50 feet of the people on the other side of the road. So we may have to come up with a definition of what that means, or put wording in here that may clarify what that means.
And basically my issue is right at the end of the driveway, as cars are going by, it's almost directly across from my driveway. So that's why it's important to me.
If they're right at the end of your their driveway, they're probably not 50 feet from your property line, because most of the roads are what is it, 23?
If I get out there with a ruler on
Yeah.
Fairfield Street, there's a good chance I'll get run over. It's no Denise Ave, but people don't slow down.
Mr. Bell?
This isn't exactly fireworks, but it's loud explosions going on. People firing weapons day, night, especially late at night. Is there, and you, the reason I know it's weapons is because it's been going on long before fireworks has been spoken about here. Do we have, I'm asking this through ignorance, do we have a town ordinance where you cannot fire a weapon within a certain distance of Memorial Hall? And that is what?
1 mile.
1 mile.
1 mile. Do we live in Denise Avenue over 1 mile
Yes,
away?
I would say so.
From the bridge to Denise Avenue, exactly a mile. I
Well,
clocked it.
That,
But you also gotta be 100 yards from a house before you fire a firearm.
that is going by the roadways and not by either using GPS or you measuring.
There's a map right here, Mr.
On
Bell.
that map. And because we suffer for many years now from somebody firing day and night. I'm not talking about
The-
Like Miller.
firing a 22 or a rifle, I'm talking about firing heavy machine guns.
I think the
Heavy
only,
machine guns.
the only recourse I know you'd have would be these gentlemen right in the front row for a situation like that.
You call that?
He doesn't, he shoots an M250 caliber machine gun and an M60. I've been called over there to repair the M2. And that's how I know he fires that, and I recognize an M2, the rate of fire, and it wakes me up. But that was our problem. We have very little problems.
I don't know how often somebody does that, but it's awfully hard when you
Sunday
call
afternoon.
Every Sunday
for the
afternoon.
police to get there and have them still doing it.
Thank you,
So,
Mike. Thank you, gentlemen.
Richard.
Night, Richard.
Hi, Richard. Hi, Richard.
I got a grandson, put to bed. Thank you, good night.
Thank you.
This was good.
Night, everyone.
I guess we need to know if the council has any questions on this also.
Right, I have no questions. Mark?
The time of 9 p.m. I believe it's still light out at 9 p.m. The sun has set, but it's still light out on June 28th. Winslow fires their fireworks up at 9:15. Wouldn't it be better to have instead of a time like 9 PM, an hour after sunset or an hour and a half after sunset?
The
State law, I think, says 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock, state law is
So
10 o'clock.
We can't go past that.
Well, so the sun sets at 8:30,
Right, I know what you're saying.
an
but
hour would be 9:30.
It's tough to enforce.
Is it tough to enforce?
No, a lot of ordinances are tough to enforce. I mean, as far as, you know, if you made it an hour after sunset, then you can look at data and find out when sunset and go an hour, but, I mean, any little thing can make it a little more difficult to enforce, yeah.
Would it make it easier just to move it to 10 o'clock instead of 9, if that's a state law?
That would be a reasonable thing to do as far as I'm concerned. I don't know how the rest of the town council feels, but to me, that's a reasonable thing during the summer. I mean, 10 o'clock is not too unreasonable. We did have some people on the committee that, a lady has a child that has to be to bed quite early because of getting them up to take them to some school, and, you know, 10 o'clock is 2 hours after that child's bedtime, so they didn't want the child woke up at 9:30. Apparently it's a child that has problems getting back to sleep and things like that, so that's one reason why we considered an early time, but that, as I say, this is a suggestion to be talked about here tonight and make changes in, so we're certainly open to that.
Starting point, yeah.
I think if you even said it at 9 o'clock, you're still gonna have people putting them off at 10. I heard them the other night, 10 o'clock. You know, and the
We
ones
have
that want
people
to do
putting them off at 11 and 12 now. You
Right.
know, it's-
I heard them the other night, saw them the other night. So,
I would have no problem with that saying 10 o'clock, and then that would match the state law. But, I don't know how Dawn feels about that, or the rest of the committee.
I know there was a contingent of people who had come when the fireworks law first came out and wanted it banned. And there was a couple of groups from communities similar to Denise Avenue who were very vocal about banning them completely. And they're the ones who sort of were saying, you know, let's push it back a little bit, let's not go to the 10 o'clock, and that's why we basically put the 9 o'clock in there. Personally, I wouldn't be upset if we didn't allow fireworks at all, but I understand that, you know, this is something that people like to do, and it's a celebration, that's fine, and we try to restrict it. I would, I guess, just as soon try to leave it at 9 and see what happens. You know, and if we have a lot of people who say, you know, it's just not giving us enough time. You still do have the 4th of July and the New Year's Eve where it goes a lot later than that. There's only a 2-week period here really where it would go past the 9 o'clock, so it's not a critical issue. You might get into the bigger issue if somebody asks for a permit. And right now our permits are from 5 o'clock Friday to 5 o'clock Sunday. And if somebody is asking for a permit on a Tuesday night from 6 to 10, do we allow the 10 o'clock on the permits as well as the other times? And I think then you're opening up a whole bunch of days where it could be late if a lot of people get permits. So I guess I would like to stick with the committee's recommendation simply because it was their recommendation, but you know, I was on the committee, so I was more part of it. The council gets the choice of going the route that the council feels is best. But I would like to leave it at 9 to try it for a year.
Somebody's got a question there.
go ahead, Josiah.
Can you get a permit for inside of this no zone on the map as well? Or is that just strictly not happening, period?
As it's written now, it would be prohibited similarly to firearms. That's not to say that the council couldn't add that and say that you could get a permit for the 1 mile zone. I think part of the rationale for a 1 mile zone is when you start having a downtown area and apartment buildings and a lot of people together. Augusta had a serious problem where people were setting off fireworks in back of an apartment. And a fire was ignited, and the fire department had to go to the fire and At the same time, there was somebody who was having a heart attack, and the rescue was at the fire, and they were delayed getting, so, you know, that was one of the more severe cases of the fireworks ordinance allowing something to happen that nobody wants to have happen. But the congestion of a downtown area is the main reason for why we don't allow it. So I would say that the council has that
I have
prerogative.
a question,
Sure.
Mr. Jim, at the appropriate time. I wondered if, when this was drafted, whether it was the intention of the authors of this to somewhat restrict the availability of permits, because my thinking being that fireworks displays are a weekend phenomenon for a lot of people. If someone's coming to their camp for the weekend, if they wanna do fireworks, they're gonna have to make arrangements to get the permit during town office open hours. That won't be even thought of by some, I'm sure, who Saturday morning will say, well, let's get a permit, town office isn't open on Saturday. So, whether that was the intent, or whether or not you wanted to make some provision for people to get a permit on the weekend somehow, I didn't know which way you were thinking when you wrote this up.
It was basically, they would have to come during the week and do it through the people in the town office. We felt that was the most efficient, effective way. The police and the fire, they've got enough other responsibilities. Plus, there's no guarantee you'll get somebody in one of those facilities on a Saturday or Sunday for somebody who last minute tries to
Okay,
do
so
something.
we're sure we'll get questions, but you've just provided an answer. Thank you.
That was our rationale, good or bad.
Thank you.
And that was during regular town office hours.
Regular town office hours.
Okay.
You would get the
You've
permit.
answered my question, thank you.
That was the discussion, but regular wasn't put in here, I guess, which it should be. Should be a change in there.
Yes, ma'am.
I've got something, I'm not sure if it would help out or not, and I do fireworks on occasion, so I'm not a big fireworker. But, I know recently I've just found out that you can actually do fire permits online. Is it possible that maybe the weekenders that wanna do it on Saturday morning could do something, could it be tied in with that same channel? Where they could still legally get their permit, but be online, and I understand there's a cost to it online versus if you do it in person, there's no cost. So those are the fire permits. I'm not sure if that could be tied in with the fireworks permits or not, just a possibility.
I don't know how the fire department gets notified about online fire permit. Do they come in on their computer, I wonder, or? I mean, we want, our thoughts were that if they got the permit at the town office, those permits would be given to the police department, so they would have them. And if the first thing they're gonna look at, if they get a call for fireworks going off out of the hours, is to see if somebody's got a permit.
Yeah.
So they have to have those permits over the weekend, you know, so that they can, whatever officer's on duty could look at them. And I don't know how the fire department does that.
And I haven't experienced it, so I just was told that recently, so.
I just have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
If we get a permit, say, like on a Friday night, is it only good for that Friday night, or is it good for the whole weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday?
Specified hours.
It should be specified right on the permit.
Okay, so can we get a permit like on a Friday night to do it on a Saturday night?
You'd have to,
Yes.
Okay, so
you'd have to.
we would still be able to get a permit to do it on a
That's what it's made like
Saturday?
that for.
Okay, all right, just making.
And you don't have to do it on a Friday, you can do it any day of the week.
You can do it on any day of the week and say it's gonna be specific
Friday,
to
Saturday,
Saturday.
Sunday, yeah.
Okay, all right.
I got a question for the chief. How much time do you think this will take, and how much time do you think it will increase?
The right answer,
Office
5 man-hours. You're looking for new officers.
There's really no way to answer that question because I don't know. I
Are
don't
you
know how
gonna
many
keep
permits are
records
gonna be out there. It's-
to
We keep
verify?
records of every call we get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if this becomes too laborsome for our department,
You'll be the first to know.
and we could
Yeah,
modify.
if it becomes overwhelming for us, we will certainly let you know.
And we got, the committee got copies of all the calls, emails or calls that the police department got about firework concerns. And they didn't feel they were spending a lot of time on them. I can't remember, was it 20-some or 23 or something like that at the time the committee met?
Yeah, it wasn't a great number.
No, and the police department didn't feel that they were spending a lot of time on fireworks calls. Some, but not a lot.
Peter, do you think it's possible to make sure that the press has a copy?
Well, a copy of what exactly?
The ordinance that we're working on.
No, I know that, but there were some changes that are being discussed, and my question is like yours, Mark. We wanna make sure that we put out there to the press something like a finished copy. And there are some ideas being discussed this evening, so I wanna make sure that we've got the version that the council wants to put forth in the hands of the press when we do that.
Don?
Procedurally, question, there are several comments that fire chief has either written or put question marks next to. There are certain things that we've come up with tonight. If we make changes to this, which I'm thinking we're going to because we've already had some discussion, do we need to outline all those changes tonight and come back, have a first version for our first hearing tonight? Or do we make some changes and basically our first hearing on the new revised ordinance would be at our next meeting?
We had taken a copy of the town council ordinance enactment procedure out of the handbook and put it with your materials. And it suggests that you can make changes tonight. You can pass the first reading with the idea that there will be changes, and have a meeting, incorporate those into the text, come back for the second reading in a revised fashion, and see if the council will vote for that.
I would move that we proceed and come up with a revised ordinance based on the input we've had tonight and have the second hearing at the next meeting with our revisions.
May I then add to your suggestion with some language that the first reading be approved, pending some improvements that you will make between now and the second reading?
That's what I said, I think.
Well, I had to put it in town manager language.
So a second by Brian?
I'll second the motion. I had one other, we
No,
can
no,
vote
no,
on that
no, no.
first.
No, we have,
Discussion.
no, we're still.
Under section B where it says restricted dates, one of his suggestions was that those should be allowed dates and times, not restricted ones, because what we did listed was the ones that were allowed, so it should be the allowed dates and times. Agree with that, Don? Rather than restricted dates.
Are we staying with the 9 o'clock? I don't have a problem staying with the 9 o'clock. I think that, if we're talking, I personally don't have a problem, see where it goes from there.
I'll agree with that.
Where it would, excuse me, where it would start at 9 o'clock in the morning or end?
And at 9 at night.
Because I was one of the ones that said that